The avalanche roared down the mountain like the wrath of God himself, swallowing everything in its path, and Juliet Kensington knew with absolute certainty that she was about to die. She'd been stupid, so monumentally stupid, to venture this far up the mountain trail alone as dusk approached. The ski resort had warned everyone about the unstable conditions after yesterday's snowfall, but she'd needed to clear her head after the disastrous phone call with her ex-fiancé. Now, as tons of snow and ice thundered toward her, she realized that a broken engagement was nothing compared to being buried alive. Juliet tried to run, but the snow was already at her feet, then her knees, then everything went white and crushing and cold. The pressure squeezed her chest until she couldn't breathe, couldn't scream, couldn't do anything but feel the weight of the entire mountain pressing down on her body. Pain exploded through her ribs, her legs, her skull. The world became a suffocating tomb of ice. Then, impossibly, something gripped her arm. The pressure changed. Instead of pushing down, something was pulling up. Juliet's oxygen-starved brain couldn't process what was happening, until suddenly she broke through the surface of the snow like a drowning person breaching water. She gasped, choking on the frigid air, her body still buried from the waist down. "Be still," a voice commanded, and it was like nothing she'd ever heard before, deep, authoritative, with an accent that seemed to belong to another century entirely. "I have you." Through her blurred vision, Juliet saw him. Even in her state of shock and hypothermia, she registered that he was the most striking man she'd ever seen. His skin was pale as the snow surrounding them, his hair long and white as moonlight, falling past his shoulders. His face was angular and aristocratic, with high cheekbones and a strong jaw. But his eyes were what made her heart stutter. They were deep crimson, the color of blood, and they gleamed with an otherworldly light in the gathering darkness. He pulled her from the snow with a strength that seemed impossible for his lean frame, lifting her entire body free as though she weighed nothing at all. Juliet's legs buckled the moment he set her on more stable ground. Pain shot through her left leg and she cried out. "Your leg is broken," he said, his red eyes scanning her body with clinical precision. "3 ribs as well. Internal bleeding. You have perhaps an hour before you go into shock and die." "Who?" Juliet's teeth chattered so hard she could barely speak. "How did you— That is irrelevant. We need to get you to shelter immediately." He didn't wait for her response. In one fluid motion, he swept her into his arms, cradling her against his chest. Juliet's mind screamed that she shouldn't trust a stranger, especially one who looked like he'd stepped out of a Gothic painting, but her body was shutting down. The cold had seeped into her bones, and the pain was becoming distant and fuzzy. She found herself pressing closer to him, seeking warmth, but his body was as cold as the snow itself. "You're freezing," she whispered. "I do not feel the cold as you do." He began moving down the mountain with impossible speed and grace, never stumbling despite the treacherous terrain and the darkness that was rapidly enveloping them. "My name is Konstantin Drăculești. I am the vampire king of the Eastern realm, and you, human, are under my protection now." Juliet would have laughed at the absurdity of his claim if she'd had the strength. Vampires weren't real. This had to be a hallucination brought on by trauma and hypothermia. But his arms felt solid enough, and the way he moved through the snow like he was gliding rather than walking didn't seem entirely human. "I'm going to die," she murmured, feeling consciousness slipping away. "No," his voice was steel in certainty. "I will not allow it." Those were the last words she heard before the darkness took her. When Juliet woke, the first thing she registered was warmth, blessed, beautiful warmth that seemed to seep into every frozen corner of her body. The second thing was the softness beneath her. She was lying on the most comfortable bed she'd ever felt, covered in heavy furs and blankets. The third thing was the pain. Her leg throbbed with a deep grinding ache, and her ribs screamed with every breath. She opened her eyes and found herself in a bedroom that belonged in a European castle, not on a Colorado mountainside. The walls were stone, hung with rich tapestries depicting medieval hunting scenes. The furniture was all dark wood and Gothic elegance. A massive fireplace dominated one wall, flames crackling and sending dancing shadows across the room. And sitting in a high-backed chair beside her bed, watching her with those unsettling crimson eyes, was Konstantin. In the firelight, she could see him more clearly. He wore all black, a fine silk shirt that looked antique in its cut, tailored trousers, and leather boots. His white hair was tied back loosely, revealing the elegant lines of his face. He was beautiful in the way that dangerous things were beautiful, all sharp edges and contained power. "You're awake," he said, rising from his chair with liquid grace. "Good. I was beginning to worry that the internal damage was more severe than I assessed." "Where am I?" Juliet's voice came out as a hoarse whisper. "My residence. It is hidden beneath the mountain, accessible only through passages that humans cannot find on their own." He moved to the bedside, looming over her. "How is your pain?" "Manageable. My leg is healing. I set the bone and gave you something to accelerate the process. Your ribs will take longer." He tilted his head, studying her with an intensity that made her feel exposed. "You were very close to death when I pulled you from that avalanche. Another few minutes and not even my blood could have saved you." Juliet's mind latched onto his words. "Your blood? What does that mean?" Konstantin's expression didn't change. "I gave you my blood. A few drops mixed in water while you were unconscious. It will not transform you. That requires a much more involved process, but it will help you heal faster and prevent infection. It is already working through your system." Horror and disbelief warred in Juliet's chest. "You're serious? You actually think you're a vampire?" "I do not think. I am." He leaned closer, and she caught a glimpse of his teeth. Normal at first glance, but then his canines elongated, becoming sharp fangs that gleamed in the firelight. The transformation took less than a second. "Does this convince you, or do you require further proof?" Juliet's heart hammered against her broken ribs, sending fresh waves of pain through her chest. She wanted to scream, to scramble away from him, but she couldn't move. "This isn't real. This can't be real. I assure you, it is very real." His fangs retracted, returning his mouth to its normal, aristocratic appearance. "Vampires have walked this earth for millennia, hidden in the shadows of your human world. We have kingdoms, courts, laws, and hierarchies that your kind knows nothing about. I rule the Eastern Realm, which encompasses most of Europe and parts of Asia. This mountain, and everything within it, is mine." "Why?" Juliet forced herself to meet his eyes. "Why did you save me?" Something flickered in those crimson depths, an emotion she couldn't quite read. "Because I could. Because I was returning from a meeting with the Western Court when I sensed the avalanche and heard your heartbeat buried beneath the snow. Because—" He paused, and for the first time he seemed uncertain. "I do not know. I acted on instinct." "And now what?" "You've saved me, brought me to your secret vampire lair, given me your blood. What happens to me now?" "Now you heal." Konstantin straightened, putting distance between them. "And I keep you safe. The avalanche damaged the mountain access roads. It will take at least 3 days before rescue teams can clear the paths and reach this area. Until then, you remain here, under my care and protection. I need to call someone. My family will be worried sick. There is no cell phone signal this deep in the mountain. The stone blocks all transmission." He gestured to a small table where she could see her phone, miraculously intact. "Once the road's clear, I will escort you down the mountain myself and ensure you return safely to your people. Until then, you will rest, heal, and accept my hospitality." Juliet wanted to argue, to demand he take her to a hospital, to insist this was all some kind of elaborate nightmare. But the pain in her body was real, and so was the preternatural grace with which Konstantin moved, the impossible beauty of his features, the crimson of his eyes. And if he was telling the truth, if vampires were real, then she was utterly at his mercy. "Why do I feel like I don't have a choice?" she asked quietly. "Because you don't." There was no malice in his voice, just stating fact. "But I give you my word, on my honor as king, that no harm will come to you while you are in my domain. You are my guest, not my prisoner. A guest who can't leave. A guest who cannot leave safely. There is a difference." He moved toward the door, then paused. "I will bring you food and water. You need to maintain your strength. Do not attempt to walk on that leg. If you need anything, call for me. I will hear you." Then he was gone, the heavy wooden door closing behind him with a soft click that somehow sounded very final. Juliet lay in the massive bed, staring at the stone ceiling, and wondered what she had gotten herself into. 3 days with a vampire king who claimed to have saved her life. 3 days trapped in a hidden realm beneath a mountain. 3 days before she could return to her normal, ordinary, decidedly non-supernatural life. Except she was already beginning to suspect that nothing would ever be normal again. The hours that followed took on a strange, dreamlike quality. Konstantin returned with food, a rich stew that tasted homemade, fresh bread and water. He'd set the tray on her lap with surprising gentleness, those pale hands steady and careful. "I don't understand," Juliet said, watching him arrange the dishes. "If you're a vampire, why do you have human food?" "I employ a small staff of humans who maintain this residence. They live in quarters on the upper levels and believe they work for a very private, very wealthy eccentric. They are well compensated for their discretion." He settled back into his chair, seemingly content to watch her eat. "I may not consume food myself, but I remember what it was like to need it. That was a very long time ago." "How long?" "I was born in 1456. I have been a vampire for 537 years. Juliet nearly choked on her stew. 500, that's impossible. No more impossible than a man with fangs pulling you from an avalanche with the strength of 10 humans. His lips curved in what might have been amusement. "You will find, Juliet Kensington, that impossible is a relative term." "How do you know my name?" "Your identification was in your jacket pocket. I checked while you were unconscious to see if there was anyone I needed to notify of your survival." He gestured to the small table where her phone rested. "Your belongings are all there, intact." She should have felt violated that he'd gone through her things, but instead, she felt oddly grateful that he'd thought to preserve them. "Thank you for saving me. For this." She gestured at the room, the food. "I know I'm in shock and probably not reacting appropriately, but thank you." Konstantin inclined his head in a gesture that was pure old-world nobility. "You need not thank me for doing what was right. No creature, human or otherwise, deserves to die alone and afraid beneath the snow." There was something in his voice, a weight, a shadow of old pain that made Juliet look at him more carefully. "You've lost someone, haven't you?" To something like that. His expression shuddered, becoming unreadable. "That is a story for another time. Eat. You need your strength." She wanted to press, but the look in his eyes warned her not to. Instead, she focused on the food, which was surprisingly delicious. As she ate, she found herself studying him surreptitiously. He didn't move like normal people did. Every gesture was economical, graceful, purposeful. He didn't fidget, didn't shift in his seat, barely seemed to breathe. It was unnerving and mesmerizing in equal measure. "You're staring," he observed, without looking at her. "Sorry, I've just never met a vampire before, assuming you're not an elaborate hallucination." "If I were a hallucination, would I not be more conventional? Less honest about my nature?" He finally turned those red eyes on her, and she felt pinned by his gaze. Most humans who learn of our existence react with more fear. "Oh, I'm terrified," Juliet admitted. "I'm just too tired and hurt to express it properly. Give me a day or two, and I'm sure the screaming will start." To her surprise, he laughed, a rich, genuine sound that transformed his face from beautiful to breathtaking. "You have spirit. I appreciate that. Too many humans collapse into hysterics when confronted with the supernatural. It becomes tedious." "How many humans know about you? About vampires in general?" "Very few. We have laws, strict laws about revealing our nature. Those who know are either trusted servants, willing donors, or..." He paused delicately. "Or what?" "Or they have been bound by blood oath to never speak of what they know, on pain of death. Not my preferred method, but some of my kind are less progressive in their thinking." Juliet set down her spoon, her appetite suddenly gone. "And which category am I going to fall into, after these 3 days?" Konstantin was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful. "That depends on what you choose. I will not force a blood oath on you. If you wish to speak of what happened here, you may, though I doubt anyone will believe you. But I hope," he met her eyes, "I hope that you might choose discretion of your own free will. Not all of my kind are as restrained as I am. If word spread that you knew of our existence and spoke openly about it, others might seek to silence you permanently. So I can talk, but I'll probably be killed if I do. An unfortunate truth, but yes. Great. Perfect. Just what I needed on top of everything else in my life right now. Juliet leaned back against the pillows, exhaustion crashing over her. This week just keeps getting better. You mentioned earlier that you came up the mountain to clear your head. What drove you to such a dangerous choice? She shouldn't tell him. He was a stranger, a vampire, someone she'd known for mere hours. But there was something about the way he listened, completely present, completely focused, that made her want to talk. I called off my wedding, she heard herself say. Or rather, I discovered that my fiancé had been cheating on me for 6 months, and when I confronted him, he told me the wedding was off because I was too boring for him now, said I'd become too focused on my work and not fun anymore. She laughed bitterly. I'm a researcher for the National Park Service. I study environmental patterns and climate change. Apparently, that makes me boring. Your former fiancé sounds like a fool. Konstantin's voice was flat, matter-of-fact. A man who cannot appreciate a woman's intellect and dedication is not worthy of her time. Thank you for saying that, even if you're just being polite. I am never polite for the sake of politeness. I am honest, sometimes brutally so. It is one of the few luxuries of being immortal and royal. I need not concern myself with social niceties. He leaned forward, his eyes intense. You are not boring. Juliet Kensington. You are a woman who climbed a mountain alone to process pain. A woman who looked at a vampire and did not descend into useless panic. A woman who possesses both courage and intelligence. Your former fiancé's loss is profound, and he will likely realize that too late. Juliet felt heat rise to her cheeks. No one had ever spoken to her like that with such absolute conviction and intensity. You don't even know me. I know enough. I have lived 5 centuries and learned to read people quickly. It is a survival skill. He rose from his chair. You should rest now. Your body is healing, but it requires sleep to do so efficiently. I will be nearby if you need anything. Wait, Juliet said as he moved toward the door. Are you just going to sit outside my room for 3 days? I will remain close, yes, why? That seems excessive. Don't you have king things to do? A realm to rule? My second in command can manage affairs for 3 days. You are my priority now. He said it simply, as though it was the most obvious thing in the world. But why? I'm nobody. Just a random human you happen to save. Konstantin turned back to face her fully, and there was something ancient and unfathomable in his expression. When I pulled you from that avalanche, when I felt your heart still beating against all odds, I made a choice. In my world, once a vampire chooses to save a life, they become responsible for that life until the danger has passed. You are injured, vulnerable, and in my domain. Until I see you safely back to your world, healed and whole, you are my charge. I do not take such responsibilities lightly. That's actually kind of archaic and weirdly honorable. I am archaic by your standards, and honor is all that separates us from monsters. He inclined his head. Sleep, Juliet. I will be here when you wake. This time she didn't stop him. The door closed, and she was alone with her thoughts in the crackling fire. Despite everything, the pain, the fear, the sheer impossibility of her situation, Juliet felt oddly safe, which was insane, considering she was trapped in a vampire's hidden lair beneath a mountain. But Konstantin had saved her life, had set her broken bones, given her his blood to heal faster, provided food and warmth and shelter, had spoken to her with respect and honesty, had made her feel valued in a way her ex-fiancé never had, and they'd barely known each other for a day. She closed her eyes and let sleep take her, unaware that in the corridor outside, Konstantin stood with his hand pressed against the door, listening to her heartbeat steady and slow into the rhythm of sleep, and wondering why this particular human affected him in ways no one had for centuries. The second day began with Juliet waking to find Konstantin already in the room, adding logs to the fire. Morning light, or what she assumed was morning light, filtered through a narrow window high in the stone wall, though it seemed dimmer than natural sunlight should be. You're awake, he said without turning around. Your heartbeat changed. How is the pain? Juliet took mental inventory of her body. Her ribs still ached, but the pain was noticeably less sharp than yesterday. Her leg throbbed dully rather than screaming. Better, actually. A lot better. The blood is working. You will heal far faster than a normal human would. He finished with the fire and turned to face her, and Juliet noticed that he wore different clothes, still all black but a different shirt, suggesting he had left at some point. I've brought breakfast. Also, one of my staff prepared the bathing chamber adjacent to this room. I thought you might wish to wash. A bath sounds like heaven, but I don't know if I can walk yet. You cannot. Not on that leg. But I can carry you. Juliet felt her cheeks heat. That seems inappropriate. Why? You are injured. I'm capable of assisting you. There's nothing inappropriate about providing aid to someone in need. He approached the bed, his movements unhurried and graceful. I have seen countless human bodies in my lifetime, Juliet. I assure you, I have no ulterior motives. I simply wish for you to be comfortable. There was something in his voice, a sincerity that she was beginning to recognize as quintessentially Konstantin. He didn't say things he didn't mean, didn't make false promises or empty offers. It was refreshing and terrifying in equal measure. Okay, she agreed quietly. Thank you. He pulled back the blankets carefully, mindful of her injuries, and lifted her with the same easy strength he'd displayed when pulling her from the avalanche. Juliet found herself pressed against his chest, acutely aware of how cold his body was despite the warm clothes he wore. Your temperature is really low, she observed. Vampires do not generate body heat the way living humans do. Our bodies maintain ambient temperature. We are as warm or cold as our surroundings. It can be disconcerting for humans who are not accustomed to it. He carried her through a doorway into an adjoining chamber that took her breath away. The bathroom was carved entirely from stone, but it was beautiful, almost like a natural hot spring. A large pool-like tub was set into the floor, already filled with steaming water. Candles lined the edges, casting warm light across the space. This is incredible, Juliet breathed. I had it designed to mimic the natural hot springs I encountered in Japan centuries ago. I find it soothing. He set her down on a bench near the tub, careful to keep her injured legs straight. I will leave you to bathe in privacy. There are towels and clean clothes on the shelf. Call for me when you are finished, and I will help you back to bed. Konstantin, she said as he turned to leave, thank you for everything. I know I keep saying that, but I mean it. He looked at her over his shoulder, and something in his expression made her heart skip. You are welcome, Juliet. Take your time. Once alone, Juliet managed to strip off the nightgown someone had dressed her in, probably Konstantin, which should have mortified her but somehow didn't, and lower herself into the tub. The hot water was absolute bliss, easing the aches in her body and making her feel human again for the first time since the avalanche. As she soaked, she found her mind wandering to Konstantin. He was nothing like what she would have expected a vampire to be, let alone a vampire king. There was no cruelty in him, no menace, just an ancient weariness coupled with an almost courtly sense of honor and duty. He listened when she spoke, really listened, with an attention that made her feel like she was the only person in the world. And he was beautiful, inhumanly so. She'd be lying if she said she hadn't noticed the elegant lines of his face, the way his white hair caught the firelight, the lean strength of his body. But it was more than physical attraction. There was something about him, his presence, his voice, the way he moved that drew her in despite all reason. She was developing feelings for a vampire, a centuries-old vampire king who had saved her life and refused to leave her side. It was absurd, impossible. And yet, with every passing hour in his company, she felt the pull growing stronger. Juliet finished bathing and managed to dry herself and pull on the clothes Konstantin had left, soft leggings and an oversized sweater that smelled faintly of cedar. And something else, something that made her think of old books and winter nights. They were far too large for her, and she suspected they might be his. Konstantin, she called, her voice echoing slightly in the stone chamber. I'm ready. He appeared in the doorway so quickly it was startling. His eyes swept over her, checking for signs of distress or pain before he approached. Better? Much, although getting in was easier than getting out will be. He lifted her again, and this time Juliet allowed herself to relax into his hold. Back in the bedroom, he settled her on the bed and arranged the pillows behind her so she could sit comfortably. "You're very good at this," she observed. "Taking care of someone, I mean." "I have had practice over the centuries. Humans are fragile creatures, and those I care about often require assistance." He handed her a tray with eggs, toast, and fruit. "Eat. Then, if you are feeling well enough, perhaps you would enjoy some conversation. The hours pass slowly when one is confined to bed." "I'd like that." Juliet picked at the food, her appetite better today. "Can I ask you something personal?" "You may ask. I cannot promise I will answer, but you may ask." "Yesterday, when I asked if you'd lost someone, you shut down. What happened?" Konstantin was quiet for so long that Juliet thought he wouldn't respond. Then he moved to the window, staring out at the diffused light filtering through the thick glass. "I had a sister," he said finally, "Elisabetta. She was younger than me, beautiful and kind and everything good in the world. When I was turned against my will, I should note I tried to protect her from the vampire who had made me. I failed. He killed her by burying her alive in the snow during a winter storm, and I could not reach her in time. I heard her calling for me, heard her heartbeat fading, but the snow was too deep, and I was newly turned and did not yet understand my strength. By the time I dug her out, she was gone." Horror and grief twisted in Juliet's chest. "Konstantin, I'm so sorry. It was 500 years ago. The pain has dulled with time, but I have never forgotten. When I heard your heartbeat beneath that avalanche, heard you fighting to survive." He turned to face her, and his eyes were bright with something that might have been unshed tears if vampires could cry. "I could not fail again. I could not let another person die alone in the cold when I had the power to prevent it. So you saved me for her. I saved you for her and for myself, and because you deserved to be saved." He moved back to his chair, settling into it with that preternatural grace. "Does that answer your question?" "Yes. Thank you for telling me. I know that can't have been easy. You shared your pain with me yesterday. It seemed only fair to return the honesty." He studied her face. "Tell me, what do you research for the Park Service? You mentioned climate change." Grateful for the change of subject, Juliet launched into an explanation of her work tracking snowfall patterns, measuring changes in alpine ecosystems, predicting how rising temperatures would affect wildlife migration. Konstantin listened with genuine interest, asking intelligent questions that showed he understood the science behind her explanations. "It must be frustrating," he observed, "to see the damage being done and know that so few in power are listening." "It is. Sometimes I feel like I'm screaming into the void, but then I remember that every data point I collect, every pattern I document, it all adds up. It all matters in the larger fight." She paused. "You must have seen incredible environmental changes over 5 centuries. I have watched forests become cities, rivers change course, species disappear. The world transforms constantly, but the pace has accelerated dramatically in recent decades." His expression was grave. "Your work is important, Juliet. Do not let anyone convince you otherwise." They talked for hours, the conversation flowing naturally from topic to topic. Konstantin told her about the places he'd traveled, the historical events he'd witnessed, the changes he'd seen in both human and vampire societies. Juliet found herself captivated by his stories, by the way he brought history to life with personal anecdotes and vivid details. At one point she asked, "Do you ever get lonely? Living so long, watching everyone around you age and die?" "Always." The word was simple, but weighted with centuries of isolation. "It is the curse of immortality. We form connections, and then we lose them. Over and over. Some vampires stop allowing themselves to care. They become cold, detached, cruel. I have tried not to become that, but there are days when the loneliness is crushing." "Is that why you're staying with me? Because it's nice to have company?" "Partly, but also because I want to." He leaned forward, his red eyes intense. "You interest me, Juliet Kensington. Your intelligence, your resilience, your honesty. In a very short time, you have become someone I look forward to speaking with. That is rare for me." Juliet's heart hammered in her chest. "I interest you," she repeated slowly. "What does that mean? Exactly?" "I do not know yet. but I find myself wanting to discover the answer." He rose from his chair and moved closer to the bed, towering over her in a way that should have been threatening but instead felt protective. "Tell me truthfully, are you afraid of me?" She considered the question carefully. "I should be. You're a vampire, an apex predator, someone who could kill me without effort. But no, I'm not afraid of you. I'm afraid of the situation, afraid of being trapped here, afraid of what happens when I go back to my normal life and have to pretend none of this happened. But you, specifically? No, I trust you." "Why?" The question was genuinely curious. "Because you've been nothing but honest with me. Because you saved my life for no reason other than you could. Because you've treated me with respect and kindness when you could have done anything else." She met his eyes steadily. "Because I can see who you are beneath the vampire king exterior. You're lonely and honorable and trying so hard not to become the monster you're afraid you might be. And I think anyone who fights that hard to stay good is someone worth trusting." Konstantin stared at her for a long moment, and Juliet saw a dozen emotions flicker across his face: surprise, vulnerability, something that might have been longing. Then he did something unexpected. He reached out and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his cold fingers brushing her cheek. "You see too much," he murmured. "Is that a bad thing?" "It is dangerous. For both of us." But he didn't move away. "I have not allowed myself to care for a human in decades. It always ends in pain, theirs or mine. I swore I would not make that mistake again. And yet here you are, refusing to leave my side." "Here I am," he agreed softly. "Perhaps I'm a fool after all. Or perhaps some connections are worth the risk." Juliet's pulse raced as she spoke the words, as she acknowledged what was building between them. "I leave in a day. After that, we'll probably never see each other again. Would it be so terrible to just allow yourself to feel something for that one day?" "You do not know what you are asking." "Then tell me. Explain it to me." Konstantin withdrew his hand, though his eyes never left hers. "When a vampire begins to develop feelings for someone, it is not like human affection. It is all-consuming, intense. We do not love lightly or casually. We love with every fiber of our being, for as long as that being exists. If I allow myself to care for you beyond simple concern for your safety, it will not end when you walk out of here. It will follow me for the rest of my immortal existence." "That sounds lonely," Juliet said quietly. "Loving someone who moves on with their mortal life while you're stuck with those feelings forever. It is the loneliest thing I can imagine, which is why I've avoided it for so long. But is the alternative better? Never connecting with anyone, never letting yourself feel anything, just existing century after century in isolation? I do not know anymore." He returned to his chair, putting distance between them as if proximity made him vulnerable. "What I do know is that you make me question choices I have held firm for decades. In 2 days, you have unsettled me more than any person has in a century. I do not know whether to be grateful or terrified." "Can't it be both?" "Perhaps it is." He was quiet for a moment. "We should rest. The day has grown late and you need to heal." Juliet wanted to push, to continue this conversation until she understood everything he was feeling, but exhaustion was creeping through her body. The bath and the long conversation had drained her more than she'd realized. "Will you stay?" she asked as her eyes grew heavy. "Just sit here while I sleep? I know that's probably clingy and weird, but I will stay." His voice was gentle. "I told you I will not leave your side until I know you are safe. That promise stands." "Thank you," Juliet murmured, already drifting off. The last thing she was aware of was the sense of Konstantin's presence, steady and constant, watching over her as she slept. In the chair, Konstantin sat motionless for hours, his eyes never leaving the sleeping woman in his bed. She was right, he should let her go, should maintain distance, should protect himself from the inevitable pain that would come when she returned to her mortal life. But for the first time in decades, he found he didn't want to be cautious or careful or wise. He wanted to be foolish. He wanted to let himself feel, even if it meant suffering later. The third day began with awareness creeping slowly into Juliet's consciousness, the awareness that this was her last day in this hidden realm beneath the mountain. Tomorrow, the roads would be clear. Tomorrow, Konstantin would escort her back to civilization. Tomorrow, this strange, impossible interlude would end. She opened her eyes to find him already there, standing by the window, silhouetted against the morning light. He seemed to sense her waking and turned, his white hair catching the light like a halo. "Your final day," he said quietly. "How do you feel?" Juliet sat up carefully, testing her injuries. The pain in her ribs was minimal now, just a dull ache. Her leg still hurt, but it was manageable. Better. Much better. Your blood really works. It does. You will be able to walk with assistance today, I think. Perhaps we could take a tour of my residence if you are interested. You have seen nothing but this room. I'd like that. She hesitated. Konstantin, about yesterday, about what we talked about. I have thought of little else. He approached the bed, his expression unreadable. I spent the night considering every angle, every consequence, every possible outcome. And I have come to a conclusion. Juliet's heart hammered. Which is that I am 537 years old and I am tired of being alone, tired of denying myself connection out of fear, tired of existing rather than living. He knelt beside the bed so they were at eye level, and the vulnerability in his face took her breath away. I do not know what this is between us. It is too soon, too fast, too complicated. But I know that I do not want to let you walk away without acknowledging it, without seeing if there might be something worth exploring. But I'm human. I'll age. I'll die. You'll be left with memories. I will be left with memories of someone who made me feel alive again, however briefly. Is that not better than an eternity of nothing? He reached out and took her hand in his cold one. I am not asking for forever, Juliet. I am asking for a chance to see where this connection leads, to allow ourselves to feel without fear of the future. Juliet felt tears prick her eyes. I'm falling for you. I know that's insane. I've known you for 3 days and you're a vampire, and this whole situation is impossible. But I'm falling for you anyway. Then we are both fools together. He brought her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that was somehow more intimate than anything she'd ever experienced. Let me show you my world, Juliet. Today, before reality intrudes. Let me show you what it could mean to be with someone like me. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Konstantin helped her dress. He'd somehow procured clothes that actually fit her, soft jeans and a warm sweater, and then lifted her into his arms. Her leg could probably support some weight now, but neither of them mentioned it. She wrapped her arms around his neck, and he carried her out of the bedroom into a stone corridor lit by electric lights cleverly disguised as torches. How big is this place? She asked as they moved through the passage. Extensive. I've been expanding it for 2 centuries. It is part castle, part modern residence, part fortress. The mountain provides natural protection from sunlight, and the depth keeps the location hidden from human detection. He carried her through room after room, each more impressive than the last. There was a massive library with floor-to-ceiling shelves filled with books in dozens of languages. A gallery hung with paintings dating back centuries, including several that Juliet recognized as works by masters she'd only seen in museums. A music room with instruments from different eras. A conservatory with plants that thrived under artificial light. This is incredible, Juliet breathed as they entered what appeared to be a throne room. A massive chair carved from black stone sat on a dais at one end, and the walls were hung with banners bearing a crest she didn't recognize. Do you really use this? When I hold court, yes. Other vampires come to me with disputes, requests for permission to enter my territory, proposals for alliances. I must maintain the appearance of power and authority, or others would seek to challenge me. Is your world very violent, the vampire world? It can be. We are predators by nature, and power struggles are constant. But we also have laws, codes of conduct, systems to minimize unnecessary bloodshed. It is a delicate balance. He set her down on the throne, and she felt absurdly small in the massive chair. There. Now you sit where vampire kings sit. I feel ridiculous. You look regal. His eyes were warm as he gazed at her. You would make a fine queen, I think." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. "Konstantin, I know, too fast, too soon, too impossible. But allow me my fantasies, Juliet. Allow me to imagine, for one day, that this could be more than an interlude." She reached out and took his hand, pulling him closer. "It doesn't have to be just an interlude. We could find a way. People have long-distance relationships. I could come visit. You could what? Appear in your human life, a man who never ages, who cannot walk in daylight, who must feed on blood to survive. How long before someone noticed? Before questions were asked?" He cupped her face with both hands, his touch heartbreakingly gentle. "I want nothing more than to find a way, but I must be realistic. Your life is in the sun, mine in the shadow. The two do not easily mix. Then we have today." Juliet blinked back tears. "Let's not waste it on sorrow. Show me more. Tell me more. Help me understand your world." So he did. He carried her to his private chambers rooms she hadn't seen before, decorated with a stark elegance that reflected his personality. He showed her his collection of artifacts from throughout history, each item with a story. He played her music on an antique piano, his fingers dancing over the keys with the skill of centuries of practice. He read to her in half a dozen languages, his voice rich and hypnotic. And they talked. About everything and nothing, about her childhood in Colorado, her parents' divorce, her decision to go into environmental research, about his human life in medieval Wallachia, his violent transformation into a vampire, his slow climb to power within vampire society, about hopes and fears and dreams and regrets. "Do you ever wish you could go back?" Juliet asked as they sat together in his study, her on a chaise lounge and him in a chair pulled close. "To being human? Sometimes. Usually when I watch the sunrise through protected glass and remember what it felt like to stand in the light, or when I encounter something that reminds me of simple pleasures, the taste of fresh bread, the warmth of summer on skin. But then I remember the other aspects of humanity, the brevity of life, the powerlessness, the constant fear of death, and I am less certain. What about love? Did you ever love someone when you were human?" "I was 23 when I was turned. I had been arranged to marry a nobleman's daughter, but it was political, not romantic. I did not know real love as a human." He paused. "I have loved since, though, 3 times in 5 centuries. Each time I watched them age and die while I remained frozen. Each time I swore I would not endure that pain again. And yet here I am, breaking that vow for you. I'm sorry. I don't want to cause you pain. All worthwhile things come with pain. That is the nature of existence." He moved from his chair to sit beside her on the chaise, close enough that she could feel the coolness radiating from his body. "But they also come with joy, with moments that make the pain bearable. You have given me more joy in 3 days than I have experienced in decades, Juliet." She turned to face him fully, her heart racing. "Konstantin, I need you to understand something. When I leave here tomorrow, it's not because I want to. It's not because I don't feel what I feel. It's because I have responsibilities, a life, people who will be worried about me. But that doesn't mean this ends." "What are you proposing?" "I'm proposing that we try. Really try. I can come back to the mountain. You said you have staff who maintain this place. They must come and go somehow. There must be ways to visit that don't involve me nearly dying in an avalanche first." She reached out and took his face in her hands, forcing him to meet her eyes. "I don't care that you're a vampire. I don't care that you're 500 years old. I care that you make me feel seen and valued and alive in a way no one ever has. I care that you're honorable and kind and trying so hard to be good. I care about you, Konstantin Drăculești, and I am not walking away from that without a fight." For a long moment, he simply stared at her. Then, slowly, he smiled a real smile, full of wonder and hope and something that looked like love. "You are remarkable," he whispered. "I'm stubborn. There's a difference." "No, you are remarkable." He leaned forward, his forehead coming to rest against hers. "If you truly wish to try, then we will try. I will find ways to make it work. I will protect you from my world while allowing you to be part of it. I will do whatever it takes to keep you in my life for as long as you will have me." "Good. Because I'm not going anywhere. Juliet closed the distance between them and kissed him. His lips were cold but soft, and for a fraction of a second, he froze, as if he'd forgotten how to do this. Then he responded, one hand sliding into her hair, the other cupping her jaw, and the kiss deepened into something that made her entire body sing. He kissed her with centuries of longing, with restraint breaking down, with an intensity that stole her breath and made her forget every reason why this was complicated. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard. Well, Juliet was breathing hard. Konstantin's breath was more for show than necessity. He pressed his face into her shoulder. "I did not plan this," he murmured against her skin. "I did not intend to fall for the woman I pulled from the snow. Life doesn't care about our plans." Clearly, he pulled back to look at her, and his eyes were bright. "Juliet, I need you to understand what this means. If we pursue this, if we truly try, you will be entering a dangerous world. Other vampires will see you as either a weakness to exploit or a curiosity to examine. There will be those who disapprove of a vampire king taking a human as a partner. It will not be easy. I study climate change for a living. Easy isn't exactly my forte." She grinned at him. "Besides, I have a vampire king who refuses to leave my side to protect me, right?" "Always." The word was a vow. "I will protect you with every resource at my disposal. I will ensure that no harm comes to you because of your association with me. Then we have nothing to worry about." She kissed him again, softer this time. "Show me the rest of your world. Konstantin. All of it. I want to know everything." So he did. They spent the rest of the day together, and Konstantin opened up in ways he hadn't allowed himself to in decades. He showed her the hidden armory where weapons from throughout history were displayed. He took her to the upper levels where his human staff lived and worked, introducing her to a few trusted servants who seemed delighted to meet her. He brought her to a sealed chamber where he kept his most precious possessions, letters from Elisabetta, a portrait of his human family, artifacts from his mortal life. "I do not show this room to anyone," he said quietly, as Juliet examined a worn leather journal. "These are the pieces of who I was before I became what I am. Thank you for sharing them with me." She set the journal down carefully. "Your sister would be proud of you, I think. Of the man you've become despite everything." "I hope so." He drew her close, holding her gently. "I hope she would approve of you as well." As evening approached, they returned to the bedroom where Juliet had spent the past 3 days. Konstantin had arranged for an elaborate dinner to be brought in food for her, and a crystal glass of dark red liquid for himself. "Is that—" Juliet gestured to the glass. "Blood, yes. From one of my donors. They provide it willingly and are compensated well. I do not hunt humans, Juliet. I have not done so in over a century. My kind has evolved past the need for violence in feeding. Can I ask what it tastes like?" "Like life, like warmth, like everything I lost when I died and was reborn." He took a sip, his fangs extending slightly. "It is sustenance and pleasure and survival all at once." They ate in comfortable silence for a while, then moved to sit by the fire. Juliet's leg was strong enough now that she could walk with support, and she'd insisted on making the short journey from the table to the hearth on her own feet, with Konstantin hovering protectively nearby. "Tomorrow everything changes," she said, watching the flames dance. "I go back to my life, and you stay here." "Not exactly. I have decided that I will travel more. I have estates in various locations, safe houses in major cities. I will find reasons to be closer to where you are. Discreetly, of course, but closer." "You'd do that for me?" "I would do far more than that for you." He pulled her close, and she relaxed against his cold body, no longer bothered by the temperature difference. "This is uncharted territory for me, Juliet. I do not know the protocols for courting a human in the 21st century. I do not know how to navigate the complications of your world and mine, but I'm willing to learn. We'll figure it out together." She tilted her head back to look at him. "I need to tell you something, though. When I get back, there's going to be a lot of questions. Search and rescue probably think I'm dead. There will be investigations, interviews, maybe media attention. I can't tell them about you, about any of this." "I understand. Tell them you found shelter in a cave, that you survived on the supplies you were carrying. I will ensure that evidence is placed to support your story." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. Your safety and your reputation are important to me. What will you tell your people? The other vampires? That I assisted a human who was in danger, as is my duty as king. They need not know more than that. He paused. Though my second in command will likely suspect, Draven has known me for 3 centuries. He will sense the change in me. Will he disapprove? Possibly. But he is loyal, and he understands that I must make my own choices. He will accept it, even if he has concerns. They talked late into the night, making plans, discussing possibilities, and acknowledging obstacles. Through it all, Konstantin held her close, and Juliet marveled at how safe she felt in the arms of a vampire. How right this felt, despite the impossibility of it all. Eventually, exhaustion claimed her, and she dozed against his shoulder. Konstantin carried her to the bed and tucked her in, then settled into his chair to watch over her one final night. Konstantin? Juliet's voice was drowsy, already half asleep. Yes? I'm falling in love with you, just so you know. He was silent for so long that she thought he might not respond. Then, so softly, she almost didn't hear it. I fell in love with you the moment you looked at me without fear. I simply did not want to admit it. Juliet smiled and let sleep take her, secure in the knowledge that tomorrow might bring change, but it wouldn't bring an ending. This was just the beginning. The final morning arrived with a bittersweet inevitability. Juliet woke to find Konstantin standing at the window, his white hair loose around his shoulders, his expression distant. The roads are clear, he said without turning around. Search and rescue teams are already on the mountain. They will find you by midday if we position you correctly. Then I guess this is it. Juliet sat up, her heart heavy. The end of our 3 days. The end of this chapter, not the end of the story. He finally turned to face her, and the emotion in his eyes took her breath away. I have made arrangements. There's a property I own in Boulder, not far from where you live. I will relocate there within the month. We will be able to see each other regularly, though we must be discreet. You're moving to Boulder? For me? I'm moving to Boulder for us. I've decided that I have hidden from life long enough. If you are brave enough to accept a vampire into your world, then I must be brave enough to find my place in it. Joy flooded through Juliet so intensely it hurt. I don't know what to say. Say you will meet me. Say you will continue this, whatever this is, and see where it leads. Yes, absolutely yes. She threw her arms around him, ignoring the protest from her still healing ribs. I want all of it, every complicated, impossible bit of it. He held her tightly, his face buried in her hair. I never thought I would feel this again. Hope, excitement for the future. You have given me back something I thought lost forever. You've given me the same thing. I was drowning in my ordinary life, in the disappointment and boredom and feeling like I didn't matter. Then you pulled me out of the snow and showed me that life can be extraordinary, that I can be extraordinary. They stayed like that for a long moment, holding each other, memorizing the feel and smell and presence of one another. Then, reluctantly, Konstantin pulled back. We need to prepare you for the rescue. I have placed supplies in a cave not far from here, a sleeping bag, food wrappers, water bottles. It will appear that you survived there. Your story should be that you were caught in the avalanche, managed to dig yourself out, and found the cave by chance. You rationed your supplies and waited for rescue. What about my injuries? Won't they wonder how I survived with broken ribs and a broken leg? I will re-break your leg before I go. Not fully, just enough to show the fracture. The ribs have healed enough that they will appear to be old injuries. You can claim the adrenaline helped you push through the initial pain. He cupped her face. I am sorry to cause you pain, but it is necessary to maintain the illusion. I understand. Do what you need to do. Konstantin helped her dress in her original clothes, which had been cleaned and repaired. Then he carried her through the hidden passages to a cave entrance that opened onto the mountainside. The morning sun streamed through the opening, and he stopped well back from the light, his body tensing. Juliet, before I take you into the sun, I need you to close your eyes. The process of breaking your leg will be quick but painful. I do not want you to see it coming. She nodded and closed her eyes, bracing herself. There was a moment of pressure on her leg, then a sharp crack and blinding pain that made her cry out. When she opened her eyes, tears streaming down her face, Konstantin's expression was anguished. "I am so sorry, so deeply sorry." He held her as she sobbed, his voice rough with emotion. "I would take the pain myself if I could." I know. Juliet breathed through the agony, focusing on his presence. "It's okay. It's necessary." He carried her the final distance to the cave entrance, staying in the shadows while she sat in the sunlight. The supplies he'd mentioned were already there, arranged to look like she'd been camping in the cave for days. He pulled a phone from his pocket, her phone, she realized, and handed it to her. "The battery is charged. Call for help when you are ready. I will watch from here until rescue arrives. I will not leave you until I know you are safe." Konstantin. "I love you, Juliet Kensington. In 3 days you have become my world. I will see you again soon. That is a promise. I love you too." She kissed him one final time, tasting desperation and hope in equal measure. "Don't you dare disappear on me. I will hunt you down if I have to." He smiled, that rare, beautiful smile that transformed his face. "I believe you would. Go, call for help. Begin the next chapter of your life. I will be waiting." Juliet dialed 911, and within minutes she heard the distant sound of helicopters. Konstantin melted back into the shadows of the cave system, becoming one with the darkness. But she felt his presence, felt him watching, and it gave her the strength to face what came next. The rescue was chaotic, medics swarming around her, questions being fired rapidly, the relief and confusion of the rescuers who couldn't believe she'd survived. They stabilized her leg, checked her vitals, wrapped her in blankets, and loaded her into a helicopter. As the aircraft lifted off, Juliet looked back at the mountain and caught a flash of white Konstantin, standing in a shadow, one hand raised in farewell. She pressed her hand to the window in response, a promise and a goodbye all at once. The next week passed in a blur of hospitals and interviews and reunions with her frantic family. Juliet stuck to the story Konstantin had prepared, and it held up under scrutiny. She was hailed as a miracle survivor, the woman who had beaten impossible odds. The media ran stories about her for a few days before moving on to the next sensation. Through it all, Juliet thought of Konstantin, wondered if he was keeping his promise, if he really would move to Boulder, if what they'd shared in those 3 days under the mountain had been real or just a product of extreme circumstances. Then, exactly 2 weeks after her rescue, a package arrived at her apartment. Inside was a letter written in elegant script on heavy paper and a key on a silver chain. "My dearest Juliet, I write to you from my new residence in Boulder. The address is below. The key will grant you access whenever you wish to visit. I have ensured the house is secure and private, with no windows that might reveal my nature to curious neighbors. I meant every word I spoke to you. You have changed the course of my immortal life, and I am grateful beyond measure. Come to me when you are healed and ready. I will be waiting. With all my heart, such as it is, K." Juliet held the letter to her chest, tears streaming down her face. He'd done it. He'd kept his promise. He was here, in her world, waiting for her. She waited until the cast came off her leg, until the doctors cleared her to return to normal activities. Then, on a cool autumn evening, she drove to the address Konstantin had provided. It was a beautiful old Victorian house on the outskirts of the city, surrounded by trees and set back from the road. Private, secluded, perfect. Her hands shook as she used the key to unlock the door. The interior was dimly lit but elegant, furnished in the same Gothic style as his mountain residence. And there, standing in the foyer as if he'd been waiting by the door all evening, was Konstantin. He wore modern clothes, dark jeans, and a black sweater, but he still looked like something out of another time. His white hair caught the lamplight, and his red eyes glowed with emotion as he saw her. Juliet. Her name was a prayer on his lips. She crossed the distance between them in 3 limping steps and threw herself into his arms. He caught her, lifting her off her feet, and they held each other with the desperation of 2 people who had been separated for far too long. "You're here," she breathed. "You're really here." "I am here. I will always be here for as long as you want me." He set her down gently, his hands framing her face. "I have missed you every moment of every day. Existing without you has been torture. It's been 2 weeks, you dramatic vampire. 2 weeks is a long time when you have found someone worth living for. He kissed her, deep and thorough, and Juliet felt like she'd finally come home. "Welcome to my home. Our home, if you wish it to be." "I wish it. I wish all of it." She looked around the beautiful house. "We're really going to do this? Make this work? We're going to try. We will face challenges, I am certain, but I have faced down vampire lords and survived 5 centuries of loneliness. Surely we can navigate the complications of an immortal-mortal relationship." When you put it that way, it sounds almost easy. It will not be easy. But it will be worth it. Konstantin led her deeper into the house, showing her each room, explaining how he'd arranged everything for her comfort as well as his safety. "I have hired a daytime assistant to handle errands that require sunlight. I've established cover stories for why I'm never seen during the day. I've prepared for every contingency I could imagine. You've thought of everything. I've had nothing but time to think since you left. Time and hope." He pulled her down onto a couch in a cozy sitting room. "Tell me everything. How was your recovery, your family, your work?" They talked for hours, catching up on the 2 weeks they'd been apart. Juliet told him about her family's reaction to her survival, about returning to work and being treated like a celebrity by her colleagues. Konstantin told her about the logistics of moving his household, about the challenges of navigating modern Boulder society, about his plans to integrate into the community discreetly. "I am considering enrolling in night classes at the university," he admitted. "Modern environmental science, perhaps. It would give me a legitimate reason to be in the area and would allow me to understand your work better. A 500-year-old vampire going back to school. That's adorable. I prefer to think of it as practical." But he was smiling. "I want to be part of your world, Juliet. That means adapting, learning, growing. Even immortals must evolve." As the night deepened, they moved to the bedroom, a magnificent room with blackout curtains and a massive bed that looked like it belonged in a castle. Konstantin held her close, and they lay together in comfortable silence, her head on his chest, his fingers running through her hair. "Are you happy?" he asked quietly. "Truly happy with this choice?" "I'm terrified and excited and hopeful all at once, but yes, I'm happy." She propped herself up to look at him. "Are you?" "I'm more than happy. I'm alive again." He pulled her down for a kiss. "You are my miracle, Juliet Kensington. The Avalanche was not the disaster I thought it to be. It was fate, bringing me the one person who could make eternity bearable. Pretty sure I'm supposed to be grateful you saved me, not the other way around." "We saved each other. You saved me from loneliness, from giving up on connection, from becoming the cold, empty creature I feared I was becoming." His eyes were intense. "Do not underestimate your impact." They made love that night, slowly and tenderly, learning each other's bodies with careful reverence. Konstantin was gentle, always mindful of her lingering injuries, his touches cool but electric against her warm skin. Afterward, as Juliet dozed in his arms, he whispered words in languages she didn't understand, declarations and promises, and devotion given voice in the tongues of centuries past. The months that followed established a rhythm to their relationship. Juliet would work during the day, studying climate patterns and collecting data. In the evenings, she would come to Konstantin's house, and they would spend the night together talking, planning, simply existing in each other's space. He did enroll in university courses, and his insights often startled his professors, who couldn't understand how this mysterious night student knew so much about historical environmental changes. They were careful, always conscious of maintaining the illusion of normalcy. To Juliet's colleagues, she had simply started seeing someone new, a private man who preferred to keep his life discreet. To Konstantin's limited circle of vampire acquaintances, Juliet was a trusted human companion, nothing more. Only in the privacy of his home could they be completely honest about what they were to each other. There were challenges, of course. A few close calls when other vampires visited and Juliet had to hide, her heartbeat muffled by Konstantin's protective glamour. Moments when the reality of his nature became stark, like the time she cut herself cooking and watched his fangs extend involuntarily, though he never made a move toward her. Conversations about the future that always carried the unspoken weight of her mortality. But there was also joy. Konstantin introducing her to other vampires who were kind and welcoming. Weekend trips to his other properties, where they could be more open about their relationship. Quiet mornings where Juliet would wake up before dusk and watch Konstantin sleep the only time he looked vulnerable, peaceful, human. 6 months after the avalanche, Konstantin took her to visit his mountain residence again. They stood in the room where she'd recovered, looking at the bed where she'd spent those 3 critical days. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "That day you went up the mountain, the avalanche that brought you to me?" Juliet considered the question seriously. "I regret the pain, the fear, the worry I caused my family. But regret meeting you? Never. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me, Konstantin, even with all the complications. As you are for me." He wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "I have been considering something, a possibility that we should discuss." "What kind of possibility?" "The possibility of transformation, of making you like me." Juliet's heart skipped. They'd danced around this topic before but never addressed it directly. "You want to turn me into a vampire?" "I want you to have the choice. You are 28 years old now. You have perhaps 50 more years if you are fortunate. And then," his voice roughened, "and then I will spend the rest of eternity without you. The thought is unbearable. But transformation is permanent. You can't undo it. No, you cannot, which is why it must be your choice, made freely and with full understanding of what it entails. You would lose the sun. You would have to leave your family eventually, as they aged, and you did not. You would have to feed on blood. Your entire existence would change." Juliet turned in his arms to face him. "But I would have forever with you." "Yes. Let me think about it. Really think about it. This isn't a decision to make lightly. Take all the time you need. I will love you whether you choose mortality or immortality. That will not change." They spent the rest of the weekend in the mountain residence, and Juliet found herself imagining what it would be like to live as Konstantin did, to see centuries pass, to watch the world transform, to never see another sunrise, but to have endless nights with the man she loved. By the time they returned to Boulder, she had her answer. "I want it," she told him as they sat in his study. "Not right away. I need time to prepare, to say goodbyes in ways that make sense, to set things in order. But yes, I want to become what you are. I want forever with you." Konstantin pulled her into his lap, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "You are certain? Absolutely certain?" "I've never been more certain of anything. I love you, Konstantin. I love you enough to give up the sun." "Then when you are ready, when you have made your peace with your mortal life, I will transform you, and we will face eternity together." He kissed her, pouring centuries of loneliness and hope and love into the gesture. "You have made me believe in forever again, Juliet Kensington. That is a gift beyond measure." "Forever sounds pretty good to me," she said, smiling through her tears. And so they planned. Juliet worked with environmental organizations to ensure her research would continue, training others to carry on her work. She spent quality time with her family, creating memories to sustain them through the eventual separation. She wrote letters to be delivered after her transformation, explaining her choice in ways they might someday understand. A year after the avalanche, on a snowy winter night that reminded them both of how they'd met, Juliet stood before Konstantin in his mountain residence, ready for her final mortal dawn. "Are you afraid?" he asked, his hand trembling slightly as he cupped her face. "No, I'm at peace. This is what I want." "Then I will make it as painless as possible. The transformation takes 3 days. You will die, and then you will wake changed. I will be with you every moment. I will not leave your side, just as I did not leave you when you were broken and healing." "I know you won't. You never leave me." Juliet kissed him one last time as a human. "I love you, in this life and the next. I love you beyond reason, beyond time, beyond death itself." Konstantin's fangs extended, and he bent to her throat. "Thank you for choosing me, for choosing us, for choosing forever." The bite was sharp but brief. Juliet felt her blood flowing, felt the venom entering her system, felt the world starting to blur and fade. But through it all, she felt Konstantin's presence, solid and unwavering. True to his word, he stayed with her throughout the entire transformation, holding her through the pain, whispering reassurances in a dozen languages, refusing to leave even for a moment. 3 days later, Juliet Kensington opened her eyes as something new. The world was sharper, clearer, more vivid than she'd ever experienced. She could hear Konstantin's unnecessary breathing across the room, could smell the stone and earth and age of the mountain residents, could feel power thrumming through her transformed body. And when she looked at Konstantin, her love, her partner, her eternity, her new vampire eyes saw him with perfect clarity. Beautiful, ancient, hers. "Welcome to forever, my love," he said, pulling her into his arms. "Forever," she agreed, kissing him. "I think I'm going to like it." And she did. They spent the decades that followed building a life together, traveling the world, joining vampire society as a bonded pair, fighting for both vampire and human rights, making a difference in ways both large and small. Juliet became a respected member of the vampire community, known for her intelligence, compassion, and fierce protection of the environment that had almost killed her and instead given her everything. Through it all, Konstantin remained her constant, her protector, her partner, her love, the vampire king who had dug her from a crushing avalanche and refused to leave her side not just for 3 days, but for all the endless nights that followed. They lived happily, truly, and completely, in a forever they had chosen together. And if sometimes they returned to that mountain, to the place where an avalanche had brought them together, they did so with gratitude for the disaster that had become their destiny. Their story became legend among vampires, the king who found his queen in the snow, the human who chose immortality for love. And in the centuries that followed, it gave hope to others that even creatures of the night could find their happily ever after. But to Konstantin and Juliet, it was simply their truth, the impossible made possible, a love that transcended death, time, and every obstacle in between. Forever, as it turned out, was just the beginning.